Welcome to the One in the Many. My name is Arshak Ben-Lian. My purpose with the One in the Many podcast is to explore the process of integration as developmentally formative and therapeutically corrective factor in human psychology. The One in the Many is the study of how conscious life differentiates identity, integrates relation, regulates itself under constraint, and sustains direction through time. Subscribe to the One in the Many podcast and connect with me by writing to abenlian@oneinthemany.net. The history of human understanding is inseparable from the history of how consciousness relates differentiation and integration. Long before philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, or physics formalized these operations, language itself preserved their structure. Etymology often carries the developmental memory of civilization's attempt to articulate the relation between existence and consciousness. Words become conceptual fossils of lived epistemology. Among the most revealing linguistic developments is the distinction between perception and conception. The Latin root of perception, percipere, combines per, through, entirely, and capere, to seize, to take. To perceive, therefore, means to take entirely, to grasp directly, or to seize through contact with reality. Embedded within the term is the act of differentiation. Perception identifies, it distinguishes, it extracts identity from the continuity of existence. But perception, as J.J. Gibson argued, is not merely the passive reception of sensory fragments later assembled into reality by the mind. Gibson's ecological theory proposed something far more radical. Perception is direct. The self does not first receive meaningless sensations and then infer a world. Rather, the self already exists in lawful contact with structured reality. The environment presents affordances, possibilities for action embedded within existence itself. Perception, therefore, becomes relational from the beginning. The infant reaching toward the mother, the martial artist sensing movement, the musician hearing tonal tension, the craftsman feeling resistance in material. All are directly engaged with meaningful structure before explicit conceptual articulation arises. This insight grounds consciousness in living participation with reality rather than detached representation of it. Perception is therefore not cold registration. It is existential contact. The world is first encountered not as abstraction, but as lived immediacy. This also explains the emotional directness of experience. Before conceptual refinement, the self already feels attraction, danger, harmony, imbalance, continuity, rhythm, and disruption. Emotional life emerges not as an arbitrary overlay upon perception, but as the affective registration of relational significance within direct experience. A child does not conceptually understand the mother before feeling security in her presence. A person does not formally articulate beauty before being moved by it. One does not theorize imbalance before feeling disorientation. Emotion, therefore, reveals the energetic relation between consciousness and existence prior to conceptual formulation. Yet, direct perception alone does not produce understanding. This is where conception enters. The Latin concipere combines con, together, and capere, to take. To conceive means to take together, to gather into unity, or to contain relationally. If perception differentiates, conception integrates. Here, the work of Ayn Rand becomes central. Rand's theory of concept formation proposed that concepts are not arbitrary labels attached to experience, but integrations formed through abstraction and measurement omission. Conception is therefore formative. It organizes perceptual reality hierarchically into increasingly complex structures of understanding. Perception gives contact. Conception gives structure. Perception reveals entities. Conception organizes them into intelligible systems. Human understanding therefore develops hierarchically. The child first encounters reality directly through sensation, movement, emotion, orientation, and relation. Only gradually are these experiences integrated into conceptual structures of increasing abstraction and depth. Development proceeds from immediacy to hierarchy, from contact to comprehension, from sensation to meaning, from differentiation to integration. This is why Rand Pisaturo's observation that conception gives depth to perception is so profound. Without conception, perception remains immediate but shallow. Without perception, conception becomes detached and empty. Integrated consciousness requires both. The scientist does not merely see stars. He sees stellar evolution, gravitational curvature, fusion processes, and cosmological history. The physician does not merely see symptoms. He sees interacting causal systems unfolding across time. The philosopher does not merely hear words. He perceives implicit metaphysical assumptions, contextual hierarchies, and logical relations. The perceptual field remains physically identical, yet the experience world deepens through conceptual integration. The one in the many extends this insight further by proposing that perception and conception participate within a larger tetradic architecture governing transformative integration. Perception, proprioception, conception, and balance. Together, these form the dynamic structure of human flourishing. At first glance, the tetrad appears symmetrical. Perception appears to complement conception, while proprioception appears to complement balance. Yet deeper analysis reveals a dimensional inversion operating within the structure itself. Perception is direct because the self encounters environmental structure immediately through action and relation. Conception, by contrast, is formative because it progressively organizes perception into conceptual hierarchy. Yet proprioception, although complementing perception, is also formative, and balance, although complementing conception, is direct. This inversion is extraordinarily important. Proprioception is not merely direct bodily sensing. It is progressively formed through recursive integration of movement, tension, spatial orientation, timing, and coordination. The body does not simply appear as a coherent instrument automatically. Embodied coherence must be developed. The infant stumbles. The athlete refines coordination. The dancer develops fluidity. The martial artist internalizes balance and timing. Proprioception is therefore formative embodiment. The self becomes progressively composed through recursive movement integration. Balance undergoes the opposite transformation. Although balance regulates structure globally, it is experienced directly. One does not infer equilibrium conceptually before sensing it. Groundedness, orientation, vertical, centeredness, stability, and imbalance are immediately lived realities. Perception establishes direct external contact with reality, while conception organizes external relations hierarchically into meaningful understanding. Proprioception internally forms embodied coherence through recursive movement integration, while balance directly regulates the proportional stability of the entire structure. This structure becomes even more meaningful when examined through the lens of geometry. Projection geometry concerns the translation of dimensional information across perspectives while preserving relational continuity. Conformal geometry preserves proportional structure locally, even while allowing global scaling transformation. Together, these geometries provide a powerful analog for consciousness itself. Perception functions projectively because the self exists perspectively within relation to the world. Every perception represents a situated orientation within a field of possibility. Conception functions conformally because it preserves meaningful proportionality across expanding scales of abstraction. Human understanding, therefore, does not merely accumulate information linearly. It projects local experience into higher dimensional conceptual fields while preserving structural coherence across scales. This is why the same relational principles appear repeatedly across domains in physics, biology, ethics, in economics, psychology, and in civilization itself. Integration preserves lawful relation despite dimensional expansion. The child's immediate experience of trust later projects into ethics, politics, intimacy, law, and civilization. Local perceptual relation scales upward into universal conceptual structure while maintaining continuity of meaning. This also explains why highly integrated understanding often feels simultaneously intimate and universal. The local and the global become conformally related. A single gesture can reveal a personality. A personal relationship can reveal a civilization. A physical law can reveal metaphysical structure. The one in the many therefore proposes that consciousness develops through recursive projection and conformal integration across scales of meaning. But the deepest experiential refinement emerges through the role of power law scaling. Human growth is not linear. The development of integration resembles biological, neurological, and cosmological growth processes governed by power law gradients. Small recursive integrations compound through time into disproportionately greater coherence, depth, and efficiency. At early stages, immense effort produces little stability. Contradiction consumes energy, attention fragments easily, and complexity overwhelms coordination. But as integration density increases, complexity becomes progressively more sustainable. The pianist no longer consciously calculates finger movement. The martial artist no longer consciously computes timing. The philosopher no longer reconstructs every conceptual relation explicitly. The integrated individual no longer forces balance continuously. Development transforms formative effort into direct coherence. This is one of the central principles of the one in the many. The subconscious itself can be understood as integrated formative complexity transformed into direct operational immediacy. At low integration, high effort produces low coherence. At high integration, lower relative effort sustains vastly greater coherence. This is precisely the signature of power law scaling. Integration increases non-linearly. Small improvements in foundational coherence generate disproportionately richer, higher-order stability. As integration density rises, the energetic cost per unit of complexity decreases. This explains why highly integrated individuals often appear calmer, more fluid, more adaptive, more perceptive, and more energetically efficient. Their complexity has become recursively organized enough to operate directly. This also reframes flourishing itself. Flourishing is not static satisfaction. It is dynamic scaling coherence. A flourishing individual continuously expands the dimensional depth of relation while maintaining proportional integration across increasing complexity. But this transformation does not occur automatically. Here, the indispensable role of volition emerges. Volition is the directing principle that senses, allocates, and organizes energy toward the next horizon of integration. Matter obeys lawful integration automatically. Consciousness must participate in integration volitionally. This is the virtue and possibility of human existence. Volition identifies disintegration, senses unrealized potential, directs attention, allocates effort, and sustains orientation toward higher order coherence. Without volition, perception fragments, conception stagnates, proprioception deteriorates, and balance collapses. Volition, therefore, functions as the active regulator of developmental scaling. It determines where attention is directed, where energy is invested, which patterns are reinforced, which contradictions are resolved, and which future integrations become possible. Flourishing, therefore, becomes a recursive process rather than a static state. It is not the absence of tension, it is the successful scaling of integration through time. The self must continuously explore new relational fields while maintaining sufficient coherence to avoid fragmentation. Too little exploration produces stagnation. Too much destabilization produces collapse. Volition regulates this proportional frontier. It senses where integration is incomplete and directs energy toward the next lawful expansion of order. Consciousness therefore resembles a living power law field of recursive integration. Every successful integration lowers the energetic cost of present functioning while simultaneously opening the possibility for higher order complexity. Mastery, therefore, increases both efficiency and depth. This dynamic also reveals a striking parallel to the four fundamental interactions in physics. Perception resembles electromagnetism because it governs the tactile interaction and differentiation across the external field. Proprioception resembles the stroke force because it forms internal structural coherence and binds the embodied self into functional unity. Conception resembles the weak interaction because it governs transformation, transmutation, and the integration of differentiated perception into higher order meaning. Balance resembles gravity because it regulates global proportional stability and maintains coherence across the entire system. The significance of this parallel lies not in reducing psychology to physics, but in recognizing a recurring architecture of organization across scales of existence. Every enduring system must detect distinction, maintain coherence, transform adaptively, and preserve proportional stability. Atoms do this. Organisms do this. Consciousness does this. Civilizations do this. The one in the many proposes that integration is the universal principle governing this recursive movement from differentiated multiplicity toward coherent unity. This also reframes the nature of wonder itself. Wonder is the emotional recognition of integrative depth exceeding one's present conceptual containment. The more developed the conceptual hierarchy becomes, the richer direct perception becomes. Reality appears increasingly saturated with invisible structure, relational depth, and meaningful coherence. Thus, the development of consciousness is not merely the accumulation of information, but the progressive enrichment of reality itself through integration. The integrated individual does not merely know more. He perceives more deeply, moves more proportionally, understands more hierarchically, and lives more coherently within the structure of existence. The one in the many, the principle of life, exists in the smallest particle that unifies matter, and in the highest purpose that unifies one's life. This is the one in the many. The principle of life is the process of integration from a single cell to an ideal human being. The story of life unfolds through integration, from a single percept to a library of knowledge. Through virtue, reason, honesty, independence, selfishness, productivity, you set your values, purpose, to achieve self-esteem and happiness. Through time and energy, from induction to integration to reduction, the smallest particle unifies matter, and the highest purpose unifies your life. You, the one in the many, matter. May you integrate your life with value-driven days.